Bumpy Johnson's most trusted bodyguard leveled a loaded pistol at the back of his boss's head, his knuckle white on the trigger, and the entire future of Harlem condensed into a single, breathless second of potential violence. September 12, 1958. The Lenox Lounge was alive, a pulsating heart of Harlem's night. Smoke curled toward the ceiling, catching the low light of amber lamps. The air vibrated with the complex rhythms of a jazz quintet and the low hum of 100 conversations about money, power, and survival. At his customary corner table, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson held court, a picture of relaxed authority in an impeccably tailored gray suit. His trademark fedora rested beside a glass of untouched cognac. To any observer, he was a man at the peak of his power, utterly secure. That security was an illusion. Moving through the crowd like a shadow was Samuel Big Sam Foster. For 5 years, Sam had been the immovable object standing between Bumpy and the world's chaos. He was a fortress of a man, 6'4" of pure muscle and a loyalty that had been tested by fire and blood. He'd taken bullets, he'd stood vigil, he'd been a brother in arms. But on this night, a different kind of fire burned in his gut, a cold, desperate fear. His hand, which had never shaken in a firefight, trembled slightly as it found the familiar grip of his .38 caliber revolver in his jacket pocket. The Italian 5 families had placed a bounty of $50,000 on the Harlem Kingpin's life. For the mob, it was a business transaction, the final solution to the Bumpy Johnson problem. For Sam, it was a devil's arithmetic. $50,000 was not a fortune, it was a lifeline. His youngest daughter, a bright-eyed girl named Sarah, was wasting away in a charity hospital ward, her lungs ravaged by tuberculosis. The medical bills were an avalanche, burying his family in hopeless debt. He had gone to Bumpy, of course, and Bumpy had given him money, a generous sum. But it was a temporary bandage on a hemorrhaging wound. The mob's offer, delivered weeks prior by a smooth-talking collector named Tony Marconi in the back of a black Cadillac, was a permanent cure. One pull of the trigger for a new identity, a clean escape to Miami, and every last medical bill erased. What Sam could not have conceived, what would have seemed like a paranoid fantasy, was that Bumpy Johnson had known about the betrayal for 21 days. From the moment Sam had stepped into that Cadillac, Bumpy's eyes had been on him. And in those 3 weeks, Bumpy hadn't moved to crush the threat. Instead, he had orchestrated a masterclass in psychological warfare, a play that wouldn't just save his life, but would dismantle his enemies, ambitions, and cement his legend in the bedrock of Harlem forever. To understand the depth of this gambit, you have to step back from that tense nightclub scene. Bumpy Johnson was an anomaly in the underworld. While the Italian syndicate, led by cold calculators like Frank Costello and Carlo Gambino, viewed Harlem as a territory to be conquered and exploited, its lucrative numbers racket a prize to be seized, Bumpy saw it as a kingdom to be stewarded. His power wasn't extracted solely through fear. It was built on a complex foundation of respect, reciprocity, and ruthless pragmatism. He was the man who ensured the rent got paid for struggling families. He was the back-channel phone call that made overzealous cops stand down from black-owned businesses. He was the impassable wall that stopped outside gangs from muscling in. The 5 families had tried brute force, sending enforcers who were sent back battered and broken. They tried political maneuvering, only to find Bumpy's connections ran deeper. They tried outright bribery, which Bumpy simply matched or exceeded. By 1958, their frustration had curdled into a desperate fury. They needed a new weapon. Their strategy was insidious. Attack not the king, but his armor. Find the one person whose loyalty seemed absolute and find the pressure point to make it crack. In Big Sam, they found both. His daughter's illness was a vulnerability as glaring as an open wound. Tony Marconi had approached it not with a club, but with the chilling precision of a surgeon. In that Cadillac, he presented the cash and the choice not as a betrayal, but as a tragic necessity. A father's duty, Marconi had called it. The alternative was laid out with equal coldness. Watch your child die in poverty, and know that a bullet with your name on it is coming regardless, because that's how this life ends. Sam had walked away from that car silent, but the briefcase of money had stayed. 3 days later, broken by the image of his daughter's labored breathing, he called the number and whispered 2 words, "I'm in." But Bumpy's intelligence apparatus was the true source of his power, a network more reliable than any gun. It was woven into the fabric of the neighborhood itself. Bartenders who remembered everything, shoeshine boys with perfect sightlines, parking attendants who knew every license plate. One such attendant, a sharp-eyed man named Elijah, had seen the suspicious Cadillac with New Jersey plates idling outside Sam's apartment. He saw Sam get in, saw the tense conversation, and within the hour, he was in Bumpy's office above the Smalls Paradise Club, relaying the details for a modest fee and the privilege of continued safety. This was the moment that defined Bumpy's genius. Most men in his position, upon learning their most trusted protector had been compromised, would have reacted with swift, violent finality. A car accident, a disappearance, a message wrapped in a shroud and dumped in the river. Elimination was the lingua franca of their world, but Bumpy sat in his leather chair for 2 hours, staring at the wall, thinking. Killing Sam would solve an immediate problem, but it would create others. It would leave a void. It might spur a vengeful crusade from Sam's friends, and most importantly, it would miss a staggering opportunity. The mob believed they were executing a perfect, invisible strike. What if, Bumpy thought, he allowed them to believe they were succeeding right up until the very last possible second? What if he could turn their masterpiece of betrayal into his own public theater of invincibility? He decided he wouldn't kill Sam. He would educate him. And in educating Sam, he would send an unmistakable lesson to every power broker in New York. The plan required audacious precision. First, he called upon an old, discreet contact in Brooklyn, a gunsmith named Victor who specialized in unique modifications. "I need a performer," Bumpy told him. "A pistol that looks real, feels real, weighs real, but whose only line is a click." Victor understood. Within 48 hours, he delivered a modified .38 special, a perfect twin to Sam's service weapon in every external detail, but with its firing pin filed to a useless nub and its chamber subtly blocked. It was a prop for a deadly play. Next came the delicate work of the swap. Bumpy needed to get the dummy gun into Sam's possession without raising an ounce of suspicion. He sent Sam on a fabricated, high-stakes errand to the Bronx, a task framed as critical and requiring his personal touch. "Fail in this and we all suffer," Bumpy had said, layering on the gravity. It was a test within a test. While Sam was gone, Bumpy and his most trusted lieutenant, a man so quiet he was known only as the bookkeeper, entered Sam's apartment. They found the real revolver, right where Bumpy knew it would be, wrapped in an oilcloth in a shoebox at the back of the closet. They made the exchange and left not a trace. The trap was now armed. All that was left was for the prey to walk into it. September 12th unfolded with a terrible, slow-motion inevitability. Sam arrived at the Lenox Lounge, the weight of the dummy gun in his pocket feeling like a lodestone of guilt. He'd been drinking just enough to dull the edge of his conscience, but not enough to impair his aim, or so he thought. He watched Bumpy laugh with a city councilman, completely exposed, his back a perfect target. The plan was proceeding exactly as Tony Marconi had said it would. Sam felt a perverse thrill mixed with his dread. This was it. Salvation was 6 feet and 1 motion away. He moved through the crowd, a shark moving through calm water. No one glanced twice. Big Sam near Bumpy was part of the scenery. He closed the distance, 10 feet 5'2". He drew the pistol, the metal cool against his palm. He extended his arm, the barrel hovering inches from Bumpy's skull. He took a final, shallow breath and squeezed the trigger. Click. The sound was small, dry, and utterly catastrophic. In the vibrant noise of the club, it shouldn't have been audible, but it seemed to suck all other sound into its void. The saxophone's wail cut off mid-note. Glasses stopped clinking. Laughter died on lips. 300 heads turned as one, their eyes wide with a collective shock, fixated on the scene. Big Sam frozen in the posture of execution, and Bumpy Johnson, who hadn't so much as twitched. Time stretched. Bumpy, with a preternatural calm, finished the slow sip of cognac he had already begun. He placed the glass down with a soft, definitive asterisk tink asterisk. Only then did he swivel in his chair. He didn't look at the gun. He looked directly into Sam's eyes, and what Sam saw there shattered him more completely than any bullet could. It wasn't anger. It was a profound, weary disappointment, the look a father gives a son who has failed the simplest test of character. "I've been counting on you," Bumpy said. His voice was low, almost conversational, yet it carried to the farthest corner of the silent room. The words were a physical blow. Sam's arm went limp. The useless pistol clattered to the floor, the sound echoing like a fallen shield. His legs buckled and he sank to his knees on the sticky floor, a giant reduced to rubble. "Bumpy, my daughter, I had to," he choked out, tears beginning to carve paths through his grimace. "I know about your daughter," Bumpy interrupted, his tone leaving no room for the sob story. He reached into his inner jacket pocket and produced a long, business-size envelope. He tossed it onto the table in front of Sam. "The hospital was paid in full this morning. There's a separate check in there for $5,000, for your family, for a new start." Sam stared at the envelope, his mind unable to process the magnitude of his miscalculation. Bumpy had not only known, he had already provided the very salvation Sam had sold his soul to obtain. The cruelty of the lesson was exquisite. His betrayal had been not just unnecessary but pathetic. "Why?" Sam whispered. "Because I needed to see the choice you'd make," Bumpy stated, finally rising to his feet. Though not a tall man, he seemed to tower over the kneeling giant. "I needed to know if our years meant more than their money. Now I know." He paused, letting the judgment hang in the air. "You're going to leave Harlem tonight. You're going to take your family and you will disappear. If I ever see your face again, there will be no conversation. Do you understand?" Sam could only nod, broken. "And Sam," Bumpy added, leaning in slightly, his voice dropping to a near whisper meant only for the traitor, yet its intensity promised it would be overheard and repeated. "When they ask you what happened here, you tell them. You tell Costello, you tell Gambino, you tell every last one of them. Tell them Bumpy Johnson knew. Tell them he's always known. Tell them they can't buy what isn't for sale. And you tell them that if they ever try to touch what's mine again, I won't be this generous." Sam fled, leaving his shattered honor and the dummy gun on the floor. He vanished from New York that night, a ghost haunted by his own failure, his story a cautionary tale he would carry to a quiet, shame-filled grave in the Midwest. In the lounge, Bumpy turned back to the room. He picked up his cognac glass again and raised it. The room waited, breathless. "They think our loyalty has a price," he announced, his voice now strong and clear. "They think our community can be divided. They are wrong. Harlem stands together, and this is what happens to those who forget it." He drank. A moment later, the bandleader, catching his cue, launched back into a swinging, triumphant number. The spell was broken, but the legend was born. The reverberations were immediate and tectonic. Within 24 hours, the story was on every underworld wire from Boston to Baltimore. It wasn't a story of a failed hit. It was a story of supernatural foresight, of a man who played chess while his opponents played checkers. The 5 families held their emergency meeting in an atmosphere not of rage, but of grim resignation. Carlo Gambino, famed for his strategic mind, summarized the collective realization. "We've tried force, we've tried money, we've tried politics. Now we've tried treachery." He anticipates everything. To continue is to waste resources and invite a war we cannot win on his ground. Reluctantly, unanimously, they made an unprecedented decision. Harlem was officially off-limits. They would consolidate their power elsewhere. Bumpy Johnson, through a single, bloodless act of theater, had won a war without firing a single shot. The legacy of that clique in the Lenox Lounge is a lesson in the architecture of true power. Brute force can command obedience, but only perceived invincibility can command awe. Bumpy understood that the most potent weapon is not the one in your hand, but the one in your opponent's mind, the seed of doubt, the fear of the unknown move. By letting Sam's plot unfold, he demonstrated a terrifying level of control and patience. He proved that his intelligence was omnipresent, and that any move against him was not just risky, but futile. He transformed a moment of extreme personal vulnerability into the ultimate display of strength. It was a masterstroke that secured his reign for another decade, a reign that would end not in a hail of mob bullets, but with his heart giving out in that very same lounge. He died as he lived, in his kingdom, on his terms. The story of Big Sam's betrayal became more than underworld gossip. It became a foundational myth of Harlem itself, a reminder that in a world of predators, the most dangerous creature is the one who sees the trap long before it is sprung. If this deep dive into a moment where psychology trumped violence resonates with you, if you see the timeless lessons in strategy and human nature, then do this channel a solid. Smash that like button and subscribe to *Winds of Thought ***. We specialize in unpacking these pivotal, hidden crossroads of history. Let the debate rage in the comments. Was Bumpy's mercy a strategic necessity to avoid a cycle of vengeance, or was it a sentimental risk that could have backfired spectacularly? Your perspective fuels this community. And turn on those notifications, because our next narrative is already queued. A story of a different kind of power play that changed the game entirely. Thanks for watching.